Anybody else? Legal matters? We stand adjourned. Thank you.
I submitted
Whoops,
a
excuse me.
I submitted a sheet here, and I didn't know. Did you receive it?
I'm sorry, I didn't get one from clerk or...
Mr. Bennett, one item I wanted to just put on the record for prior to any public testimony is the February board meetings forward, we now will keep track of any items that any person from the public requests in terms of public records from the podium. And those items will be tracked by the clerk of the board, who will then submit them to the public information officer in the building, so that those are responded to in a timely manner, in addition to any written public records requests we receive. And those items that are requested at the podium will be part of all meeting minutes for any board meetings.
Okay. Adele,
Thank you.
you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Adele Eisner, Cleveland Heights, Ohio. There is a lot to comment on and a lot that I shall not comment on today. I want to start my comments with, and Jane keeps telling me to stop it. But this is what we're seeing in an acting director and deputy director and acting manager almost, supervision almost for the entire Board of Elections. She's doing a phenomenal job. She clarified the archiving situation. She called me. We got it clarified with great reason. And I just want to say huge thank you, and thank you for your last comment. Those are things that I've asked for before. So thank you, Jane, for listening. I want to say regarding what happened at the beginning of the meeting, I can say many things. However, I do want to put on the record that Mr. Coaxum, I appreciate your great sanity and wisdom in answering and asking the right questions. I have not always agreed with what you've done after those questions have been asked, but thank you. And I will miss you for at least hearing me. So thank you, and not waging a campaign of disinformation. I appreciate all the wisdom that you brought to the board. I agree with the campaign. I think Mr. Lambert put it very well, waging a campaign of disinformation. I was at most of the trial. I've asked about what are the duties of the board. I've asked for the minutes to be put online, et cetera, et cetera. However, and I'm astounded at what happened this morning with a whistleblower, that the person who brought the attention to this would be so dragged through the mud. And the person who actually followed through in a very professional way within his own office, as in Reno Ordini, would be dragged through the mud. And then report, to write an honest report, get someone dragged through the mud, as I've been dragged through the mud as a citizen interested in clean and fair elections. I will go on to two very specific things, the L&A policy and the security policy, as they are very much interconnected. On October 2nd, we stood here and many citizens gave input about a security policy that we were told on 2 days before the election on the 5th of November that we could not see because it was a security policy. That is a quote from Mr. Vu. I'm still trying to get that security policy. I stand here and repeat that that is something that I am not expecting Jane Platten to do all by herself. She has a huge plateful. That security policy is not a security policy. I will note that the attention of this board on election day, when we came in here waiting, as usual, for a meeting to start late, there were boxes of trash here, apparent trash. And Mr. Rosenberger, who's here, and I started going through the trash, and there were memory cards. Memory cards, it wasn't trash. Voter access cards, paper canisters. I'm not directing this at you, Jane. That's how much this organization knows about security. If you have memory cards laying here, 5, it's just going through the box of junk, apparent junk. Card encoders, just laying here. This board needs a meeting of interested, talented citizens, not Diebold, to review a security policy, and as long as we have the DREs, to actually get some sort of proper chain of command, some sort of proper understanding of what is computer security, etc. And it needs to start now. There are talented citizens who are willing to help this woman who's carrying the entire Board of Elections operations on her shoulders right now. LNA testing. I request, yes, the last LNA test did get on your public website, as I've been asking since August 2 years ago. However, it was listed under legal notice. That was the headline. It should say public pretest, not legal notice. The LNA test should not follow a Diebold procedure. That is like asking the fox to check the hen house. Thank you. I am hoping that a meeting is called for actual LNA testing, actual computer security, and that citizens who've been asking just to help get called in, because we really do want clean elections, not campaigns of political disinformation. Thank you.
Thank you, Adele.
We get an explanation of the memory cards, what it was. Somebody come forward and tell us what was on this box.
I would be glad to tell you. My name is Ray Rosenberger. My name is Ray Rosenberger. My address is 6232 North Canterbury Road, Parma, Ohio. What Adele is referring to is when we came in here on that day, there were boxes laying here in front of the divider. And when we looked inside of those boxes, we found memory cards, we found encoders that had been used apparently for a training session. But putting that aside, those were actual working mechanisms, devices. They were left here unsecured and weren't removed until maybe 2 minutes before the board.
After they heard us, I'm sorry.
Pardon?
After they saw us and heard us.
Well, I can't speak to that. I'm saying that they properly did send someone to then remove them. They were left unattended. And certainly, if anyone was of a devious mind, they perhaps, I don't know, possibly walk off with one or at least record information about them. So that's what she's referring to. And there was a videotape made of them that is available still, if the board so desires to have that tape. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I'd like to get a copy of that tape. If you'd be kind enough to submit it to you to see exactly what he's talking about. And I'd like to have somebody from the staff address the issues that they found. What date was this?
11/7/06, Election Day. And it was while we were waiting almost 40-some minutes for the meeting to start in this room. And yes, but that's not the point.
Lou, can you offer any explanation to this?
The main point, however, is that we need an overall overview of what is security.
The training supplies are kept by the trainers during the length of time that they're doing their work. All the equipment that they use cannot be used in our production environment. The key codes are set to factory default settings. So while I am concerned that they were left here unattended and not properly inventoried, they could not have been used in any nefarious way to mess with the ongoing election. having heard this for the very first time, right now, I will do some further investigation.
Check with Hari Hursty in Florida and see if a memory card just laying here, and there were 5 of them that we didn't dig, that we found right on top, if a memory card cannot be used to put in nefarious code into a machine that could be taken into any other machine, and that could fix an election. A memory card has that ability. Thank you.
Lou, in the trainer's manual, is there security procedures in there for this?
I am not aware of what is in that manual.
I can address the coworker, manager, and staff, assistant managers. I can also check to see what's in the coworker book, but I would need to have a little bit of time to talk to that staff so I can figure out what happened, number 1, and number 2, how do we prevent it from happening again.
It would seem to me, Mr. Chairman, and I'm not minimizing it by saying it's a housekeeping issue, but it's a housekeeping issue that could spin into
Thank you for
an unbelievable consequence.
what you told us.
May I ask a question to the gentleman?
Sure.
The memory cards that we found, and you'll see on the videotape, if I put that side by side with an actual memory card, could I tell the difference?
And
A
that's-
layperson, say somebody out of the voting, I'm sorry, out of the voting location, could they tell the difference?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what your expertise level is. Board of Elections employees can tell the
Yeah.
difference.
So I guess where I'm going is if I walked out with one for whatever reason, went to a voting location, put it in there and it wouldn't work. So I tell them, would they give me another card?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Would a poll worker give you another card?
Yeah.
Well,
A
poll
voter
worker
ID.
would not have a card to give you.
Okay.
If that happened, the procedure is to take that machine out of service. A call would be placed down there, and we would send out a replacement unit and investigate from there.
Those cards could eventually get into the server, however. I mean, they could. They could even be used for the quote-unquote LNA testing, and they could be slipped in there. It's to have a memory card, 5 memory cards or more, just sitting there, and voter access cards with encoders. Attached to the lanyard was also on 2 encoders, 1, the key to the machines, laying there with paper canisters.
Give me an opportunity to figure out what happened and what we can do to prevent it from happening again.
I would love to volunteer to be on a committee with other people so interested to help get an overview of what computer security
Well, it
is.
occurs to me that it's at the very best sloppy housekeeping. And I think that we ought to have a security policy that accounts for even the training materials when it comes to any access cards. Because I agree with the gentleman there. If you can't tell the difference, then if nothing else, the perception again to the general public is that we don't have a good security policy here. And that these questions get raised because for some reason or other, and Lou, I'm not directing this directly at you, but I'm directing it at everybody. That when people ask questions about something, we ought to get it in writing, and we ought to respond to them in writing so that we give them at least a reasonable explanation as to what happened. Otherwise, what ends up is it ends up in some report of alleged Ohio Revised Code violations that lead to criminal indictments and lead to people being put in jail, prison in Marysville for 18 months. That's exactly what happens.
Mr. Chairman, it was brought up at the last meeting, and I credited Adele for this, talking about bullet points at the end of minutes, and talk about action plans that we take, so we can, not rate it, but track it every meeting. What were the bullet points? What was the progress made in correcting these bullet points?
I'm going to think on that process.
And may I point out that one of the directives that was just on this agenda was about public records. And it's again stated by the Secretary of State that requests for information do not have to be made in writing. I understand that it might be helpful And I've put many requests in writing, but have gotten no answers from the board.
Which is why we now are tracking.
Jane, I fully understand. That was before.
We're gonna, make sure we keep the thing.
Jane, I know that. I know that now. It was like talking to a wall before that.
Evidently, the gentleman had given us, also wanted to speak in the public session, because unfortunately passed out in our men's room and is being given medical attention, and they needed his name.
Who was that?
Is there anybody else that wishes to speak before the board this morning?
Mr. Chairman, just my concluding statement.